Want to know more about Moll Anderson? Check out our website, mollanderson.com, where you can also pick up her latest book, Seductive Tables for Two. Now let's get back to Moll.
Welcome back to the Moll Anderson Show. Well, I've really been looking forward to having author of the new fab book, SWOON, on the show. Her name is Betsy Prioleau. Betsy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Well,
thank you for having me on the show.
Well, anyone who writes a book with the title SWOON absolutely had to be on my show.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so delighted to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you, and you've been getting a lot of press. You've been featured in Elle magazine and Vanity Fair. You're just popping up everywhere.
Well, yeah. Well, it's a topic people are interested in and confused about, too.
Well, tell us what inspired you, first of all, to do this book.
Lots of things. Well, first of all, I've always been fascinated by the mystery of why some people are always lucky in love. So I studied women first in a book called Seductress.
Oh.
And, I found that these women had been so distorted and misunderstood. And then I was teaching a course at New York University, and I decided to focus on ladies' men to see if the same thing was true. And sure enough, they'd been misunderstood, but I was left with more questions than you could imagine. So then I just delved into lots of research.
Wow. Well, it's interesting that you've written this book, because I remember when Don Juan DeMarcos came out with Johnny Depp, and it was so funny because you fell in love with his character, even though you wanted to like be mad at him for all that he did. Honestly, he left the women better after he was gone than they were. Yeah. It was like he made them come alive and find this passion inside them.
Right. He said, I give women pleasure, but it's pleasure that they've never had before.
Yes, I know. I love this. This is so cool. Well, so what do you think is the number one most misunderstood, I should say, thing about these kind of men?
Well, I think the most misunderstood is the idea that these guys are satanic rakes, that they're, misogynistic players who are only interested in sex for points. In fact, the men I studied, the great lovers, really love women, and they're not interested in scores, in the people that I studied anyway, and they have this approach to love that's very, very different. I mean, they see it as a kind of art form. It's kind of the difference between a box step and a tango. I mean, they just...
Oh, there's a big difference between those two dances.
Right. They just... they are very sophisticated artists when it comes to love, and they know how to move the needle with women. It's amazing, and make them purr.
Well, can you track any changes in seducers over the centuries?
Well, there are definitely a few changes. I mean, I don't think that women today who can earn their own living and paycheck are as interested now in riches or power, if they ever mattered at all. And I don't think that women now who have so multitask are all that interested in putting up with a lot of high-maintenance men, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Some of the guys in the past, Lord Byron was marvelous, and Liszt also, but women are a little bit too busy for that. But they do share some interesting things in common, even now, even though, you don't have the same emphasis on status that used to exist. You still have these same wonderful qualities that they've had throughout the ages. Mostly they have this amazing sexual voltage, this inner Shazam. And as I say, they have this extraordinary way of wooing women. They are perpetual suitors and perpetually interesting. They cherish women and don't do dull. They really are God's gift to women. The only thing is, you can't take them wholesale, because these women these men, have their flaws. I mean, they're obvious.
Right.
And so they're not role models per se. But if you harvest the good stuff, all these love arts and secrets, it could be really beneficial to the ordinary guy.
Sure. Well, what does the overwhelming popularity of 50 Shades of Grey, for instance, say about today's cultural, sexual generation here?
Yeah, my view of 50 Shades of Grey is a little bit different. I know you've had people on the show talk about this, so they've probably gone through this.
We've had so many different, aspects. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
but I want to hear yours.
Well, mine is probably different. I think it's less about S&M than it is about women's unfulfilled romantic desires right now.
I agree.
In one study, 75% of women said they are bored with dates and mates. They're sexually frustrated. That has been well documented.
Yes.
And Christian certainly doesn't fail in that department.
No.
And women feel neglected. There are lots of studies about that. That is the number one reason for divorces and separations, not infidelity or abuse, which is really strange. And obviously, Christian does not neglect Anna. I mean, he's all over her continually. Yes. And women also, another thing, I think women are tired, and I also read some studies to support this, women are tired of being the aggressors. And they long for men who come on with this passionate royal rush. Mm-hmm. So Christian satisfies that as well. Then they're famished for conversation. And here is Christian, these long conversations about his psyche and bed and, always keeping her entertained, always drawing her out, and the perfect listener.
He was definitely in charge, too, don't you think? I mean, he would, take charge of what they were going to do, and he would plot out these scenarios that, women wish their husbands would just put a little thought into it every now and then.
Yeah, just exactly. Well, it's called the mating effort.
Yeah,
I
like that term.
And by biologic right, men are supposed to do that. But in about the last 20 years or so, they've dropped it and sort of retreated to man caves and let women pursue them. So that's an aberration, really, throughout cultural history. I mean, we haven't seen that for many, many, many centuries. Usually men take the initiative. And this is nice for women because it gives them a feeling of power, interestingly enough. It's called the principle of least interest in sociology. That is, the person who does all the pursuing is the one with the least power, but the one who is pursued has the high card, which is kind of counterintuitive, but true.
Interesting. Well, who are our ladies' men today?
Really, really interesting thought there. It's hard to know from the Hollywood spin exactly what's going on out there. But if you look at Ashton Kutcher and the fact that he's a self-proclaimed lover of women, he enjoys their company, he's smart, sensitive. This is all, again, Hollywood spin, but I would put him up there.
Right.
And Ryan Gosling is the darling of women everywhere, of course, and he has that same sort of quality that you see so much in demand right now among ladies' men. That is, they are less macho, more expressive, more appreciative of feminine strength and ambition, and, empathic. He plays that card very, very well, at least in films and so on. Even when he plays the gamer, he's praising women, and again, of course, he falls in love in the end. So those would be obvious role models, and Johnny Depp, of course, with that sort of dishy.
Although
fashion.
I was very disappointed in his outfit he wore to the Grammys.
I missed that.
I mean, you can only pull that pirate thing so long,
Yeah, oh no, I thought he was a sort of protean guy who changed all the time.
I know. I mean, I so loved him in that movie. I mean, it was he was funny, he was, deep, and he was, he just had that whole romance thing down. And I think he's been playing that card for so long, and he stepped up on the Grammy stage and he looked like he, had really should have walked out of the Wild West, and it only works so long, It's like we do need to change with the times,
Right. But as far as actual ladies' men, I interviewed maybe 15 or so.
Now, how did you do this? Did you put an ad out that said, all ladies' men, please apply here?
What's hilarious is I didn't pursue them at all. They literally landed on my doorstep, and it all began with a priest who called me up. I was doing historical research, and he called me up and said, I don't know whether you've talked to anybody, he said, but you must meet this man. He said, every time we go out for coffee, the women just appear. And, they're
and this was a priest that was telling you this? Was he holding confessions at the coffee shop?
Well, he was an unconventional priest. He said, look, God's given you a gift.
Yes.
At any rate, I interviewed him, and he was so contrary to anything that I'd expected. I thought, this is interesting. And then the next thing I knew, people were coming to me, and they were saying, you've got to talk to X. He's just amazing. 4 women in my hometown, Richmond, Virginia, recommended this fellow to me. And then other people, men, they feel sort of as if they're a secret fraternity, and they know other ladies' men, and they would say, you must talk to my friend so-and-so. So I didn't pursue it as actively as I might have. That would have been...
That's so interesting. Well, if you do a sequel, I have a few names to throw in there.
Oh, good. That's what everybody says. Everyone, when I tell them about the book, they say, oh.
Well, now, we talk about ladies, men, but are there men's ladies? I mean, what is the opposite? How do you say that?
Yeah, well, seductresses, that works.
Yeah, well, I like that word, I'm all about seduction.
The curious thing about these ladies' men, and, I didn't expect to find this either, is that they do have a problem with fidelity. I mean, to cut right to the
Clearly.
I mean, they're geniuses of love, and it's very hard not to spread the wealth.
It's really hard to hold them back, I mean, they're out there spreading the love.
Right, but some of my great ladies' men became completely faithful when they met their match. That is to say, they met a woman who was their counterpart, a woman who could pick and choose the men that they wanted.
A true seductress, maybe.
Exactly, and that fascinated me. There was a wonderful ladies' man, Helvetius, in 18th century France, who was just a hellion, a tremendous rake. But as soon as he met Minette, this incredible seductress, he moved with her to the country and never looked at another woman again. And it was the same is true of Turgenev and a number of other ladies' men in my book. I was intrigued by that.
So do you think maybe they just hadn't met the right woman?
It could be. It could be. In the romance novels, they say a reformed rake makes the best husband.
Wow. Wow, that's a powerful thought.
So it's entirely possible, that they just don't meet anybody as strong as they are who challenges them. I do think that a lot of men today are challenge-starved, and when they meet a woman who has a big sense of herself...
I think everybody loves a challenge, and, men especially. But, if you're just joining me, I am speaking with author of SWOON, Betsy Prioleau, and this is such an interesting book. I mean, first of all, I love the title, like I said before, and I think that there's so much need for this because I'm always talking about relationships and seduction. And, the word seduction, as we know, gets a bad rap. And it's like you said, the seductresses and the way, over the years of history, how people view it. And the French use the word seduce, in such a regular term. It's not a bad word. And
not at all.
And, when I wrote my book, The Seductive Home, it was really funny to watch how people reacted to the title. They said, The Seductive Home, what is that? Ooh, can I open it? Like they thought I was going to be naked in it, or something. I don't know what they were thinking. I said, no. I said, it's about, evoking this sense of, warmth and it's inviting, and it's about curling up on the sofa with a glass of wine. I mean, they just looked at me like, oh, They thought it was going to be something dirty. So I'm really working at changing that word because I think you're right.
Yeah.
We just have this view of sirens and seductresses that are negative when in fact there's so much we can learn.
I think it's just a charming way of getting the answer yes.
Oh, that's a good one too. I like you, Betsy.
I like you, Moll.
So bottom line now, you've written this book. What do women really want?
I think they want three things. I think they want to be charmed. Mm-hmm. I think they want to be cherished.
Absolutely.
And I think most of all, they want to be perpetually courted. And by that, I mean they want to be interested. They want to be excited. They want to be rocked. And they want a grand amour that lasts. So I think it boils down to just that. I think mostly they just want to be, on an ongoing basis, treated the way they were on the first date.
Hear, hear. I think that's so true. Now, let me ask you this. Who did you actually write this book for? Is this for men or is this for women?
Well, I wrote it for both, actually.
Good.
I wrote the book two ways. It was why it took a long time. My first book was just about the men. And then I realized, wait a minute, this is an interesting window onto what women want. And then I read some romance novels, and I noticed that some of those heroes resemble real-life Casanovas. Wasn't that interesting? So in that way, I sort of pulled in women and began to see that this was an insight into women's deepest and sometimes unvoiced desires. And isn't it interesting that these men represent all of that? Because it's not publicized very often.
No, it's not. Well, if you haven't gotten your copy of SWOON yet, go out and buy it. Makes a perfect gift anytime, anywhere. Thank you so much, Betsy Prioleau, and please come back.
Oh, well, thank you, Moll. This has been so much fun. Thank you.
It has
been. Your show is wonderful.
Well, thank you. I hope you'll come back.
Oh, good. I hope so, too.
All
Thank
right.
you again.
Have a great time.